Hello, it's Richard Pears from FinextraTV, and we're here at Sibos 2022 in Amsterdam in the studio on the last day. And I'm joined by Andy Smith, CTO and co-founder of RTGS.global. Andy, how are you?
Not bad, Richard. How are you?
Well, excited. You know, it sounds like you're going to be taking this interview in a slightly different step. So I think that's an interesting way to approach things. But RTGS.global, tell everybody what it is. It was 3 years ago, I think, when Nick and I sat together. He announced RTGS.global. But remind people what it is and what you're doing.
Yeah, so RTGS.global is a financial market infrastructure. We do one thing, and we do one thing very well, right? Which is a settlement fabric or a global settlement layer between jurisdictions, between geographies. So it's solving a load of problems to do with cross-border payments, cross-border trade, essentially, and removing that friction from those processes.
So you walk around here and listening to those words, it sounds like a lot of people are doing that. What's different about what you're doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at the challenges of what cross-border is or what correspondent banking is. We come in it a slightly different way. I think if you're going to be doing something innovative and you want to drive forward, you've got to be mindful of what you see behind you and what works today. So we have a concept of what we call a global settlement fabric. And a settlement fabric just means that there's certain things that work well today and you can link them together. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go off piece,
okay,
Richard.
Go on then.
Let's grab this.
Okay.
And let's have a little demonstration of what I'm trying to explain.
Right.
Forget this. I'm just going to use this as a table, right? In each geography and jurisdiction, you have domestic payment systems, and they work today, okay? So in the UK, you've got faster payments. In America, you might use TCH and chips, wherever you are around the globe, right? Mm-hmm. So those domestic payment systems work fine today. So if you're looking at cross-border, why do you want to break that? Why do you want to interfere with that? You've already got it. So if you think of a settlement fabric, this was just sitting on the side, luckily.
Okay. You could do a magic trick or something.
You're going to do a magic trick,
okay.
Right? Have you got your phone?
I hope so, yes.
This is probably the most informal interview you've done, isn't it?
Right, okay.
Let's put your phone down.
Fine.
Let's imagine
this is definitely a magic trick.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's imagine that is a payment system,
okay.
Domestic payment system in a geography. Now, settlement fabric is everything to do with that payment system right now. Mm-hmm. So it's the financial market infrastructure, it's the central bank, it's the ledger off the back of that, it's the infrastructure that may be running on-prem or in the cloud, it's the messaging, it's the banks. And that's what makes up domestic payments, right? But if you was to look at that, there's a load of other things that are just too small that we don't talk about. You know, what infrastructure you're running, who's your core banking provider, what's the messaging layer interconnectivity with there, what are the account holders, what's the reason even behind making those transactions. All of those things collectively, they make up fabric, settlement fabric. I think in one of my talks I talked about the Force, right? So Obi-Wan Kenobi said to Luke Skywalker, the Force is everything that surrounds you, penetrates and binds you. It's a similar thing. It's the space between everything we do.
Okay.
I've not lost you.
Move me forward quickly now.
Forward,
You're starting to get a little esoteric. Come on, here we go.
So here we go. So there's a domestic payment system.
Yeah.
Now if you can stretch that fabric, like I've done here, sooner enough you'll find another domestic payment system. And you can multiply that. Now the fabric touches these payment systems very lightly. It's a thin layer, okay? Integrated at a very thin layer. But because they're connected, they're now interoperable. So that payment system is now interoperable with this payment system. The banks that are connected are now interoperable. Mm-hmm. So when I think of cross-border trade, I'm in the UK over here and I want to settle a US dollar transaction. And let's go with UK's wholesale PVP.
And the key thing is wholesale here, right? Because people are going to say, hey, I can do these things with my retail and my Visa or whatever, but you're talking wholesale.
Wholesale.
Okay.
How do you get those funds?
Okay.
So my bank over here wants to source 100 million US dollars. Okay, you can do that via the settlement fabric because you're going to execute PVP, a trade. So you've done your FX trade outside of the platform with a settlement rounds. It links them together across this fabric and then makes the transaction atomically. So we lock funds, and Nick would have talked about it, isn't it, first of you? We lock funds in the US, we lock funds in the UK, and we atomically settle that immediately, 24/7 PVP. Once you've got those funds, you can make a transaction. So whatever you want to do in the FX world or cross-border, you can make immediate payments off the back of that wholesale movement.
Okay, so we're getting away from sort of the Vostro Nostro and the trap liquidity that's associated with that, are we?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you no longer have fragmented liquidity. You don't have it sitting across loads of Nostro, Vostro banks. In fact, you don't need correspondent banking in the same way that we view it today. So I don't want to jump on the Web 2.0 bandwagon, but if you think of correspondent banking 2.0, what would that look like? all the banks connected in this payment system, all the banks connected in that payment system, they're now interoperable across the fabric. So I don't have a Nostro-Vostro with each one of my correspondents today in the US. I have one account that's a USD account, and the US banks will have one account which is a GBP account in that example. I can use that as pooled liquidity across any of the participants and make payments to any of them because of that.
Gotcha. So unless you're going to take anything else out of my pockets
No.
to put on there, are we wrapped? Is that the story for today, the magic trick? I just don't know what's coming from you next.
No, I'm going to leave it there today, Richard. But
Great
that's
stuff.
Global Settlement Fabric, and that's what
Global
we're doing.
Settlement. Fantastic. Great fun. Good to hear from you. Educational. But for now, Andy, thanks very much.
Lovely. Thanks, Richard.